what a disaster this is. You know what? I think we might have made this thing a little bit too loud. Ruining my B-roll. Don't just take my word for it, though. Shoo! About 80 at cold start in the truck. And about a foot away, we got 104 decibels at idle. Does sound rowdy though. But the lightning is back. Maybe I'll put the window up for a second. Passenger side window anyways. So yes, the lightning has been off the channel since last fall. I think the last video was we cleaned up, did a bunch of cosmetic stuff in the engine bay. I basically built this truck last summer, did all the mods that I wanted to do to it after I bought it in Florida, drove it 1,500 miles home. It already had a built motor and a Whipple, but it just basically hadn't been touched since 2009. So I did a whole build series on this truck and basically made it the perfect Lightning that I would have built, or I did build. I made it the Lightning that I wanted. The ultimate second-gen Lightning, in my opinion. Cowl hood, 20-inch wheels, brakes, lowered it down, QA1 adjustable shocks all around. We did the Expedition center console, custom steering wheel, gauges, and then we did the exhaust. And I said it in the first exhaust video, and I'll say it again, the exhaust on these Lightnings is tough to get right, because if you notice where the exhaust exits, which is right behind the passenger side, right behind the cab, right at the front of the bed there, if you think about the fact that the long tubes end at the front of the cab and the exhaust comes out at basically right after the back of the cab, you basically have this long, or like 24 inches, to fit in whatever exhaust setup you want. So I struggled to get an X-pipe and 2 Corsa mufflers in the last video. The reason I went with Corsa is because I've always had great luck with Corsa mufflers. It's a high quality 304 stainless steel muffler. Corsa mufflers are known for not droning, so I went with their, I think it's called their Pro Series. And I opened the box and found out that if you look inside, it's basically a straight pipe. There's like a couple little zigzag holes, but it's this giant muffler casing, and then just a couple little zigzag holes. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like a straight pipe. Corsa has obviously figured out something that says, you know, if you do this, it's not gonna drone, which I thought would be great, but I pretty much knew immediately once I started the truck after finishing the exhaust that it was too loud. Oh, good God. What have I done? That is loud. Maybe it's just because we are just in the garage here, but that is loud. The mufflers did exactly what they were supposed to do, which is they don't drone, but the truck is just too loud. Let me open up this window and I'll show you. So we're accelerating away from the stoplight. Very light throttle. I'm in the driver's seat, and that was almost painful for my ears. I didn't even give it that much throttle on Friday of this week, and my wife and I went to put new tires on her SQ7, and she got out of the truck and was like, that thing hurts my ears. I haven't been in the passenger seat yet, but I can only imagine it's worse. So right now, just cruising, we're about 77 decibels. If I get on like a light throttle again like that, that's 102 decibels in the cab at like 1/8 throttle. That's a little bit excessive for me. Maybe I'm getting old. I don't know, but it doesn't sound good. It sounds like a dump truck or something. I mean, at wide open, it sounds like all hell is broken loose. And it sounds sick at idle, which I'll show you in a second. Hot idle, it sounds great. But other than that, like this, I don't know, it just doesn't sound refined. I will say, to Corsa's defense here, it doesn't drone at all. And maybe if this was a different platform where the exhaust went out the back, it would work better. But out the side, right next to your ear, it's just excessive with no cats, an X-pipe, and just those Corsa mufflers. It's just too much. So yeah, in drive, foot on the brake, sounds sick. Pulling into a car show or whatever, she chops pretty good. Now, I mean, hot idle right there. Absolutely love that. The chop sounds good, nice and aggressive, but everywhere else it's too loud. But I'll be damned if she don't sound good right now. Phew! I'm telling you though, get on it. I wish I had this thing set to, I'll have to do it one more time. Let's go max. Slow. If I hold it, max. Let's do that one more time. See if we can keep it straight here. Oh my God. 130 decibels. In the truck. That is insane. I'm telling you, I've been at stoplights, you know, just as we, you know, as it just sounded outside the truck, and the exhaust is literally pointing in to some poor old lady's window, and she's leaning on her window doing this, just plugging her ear. And I don't blame her. If that exhaust is shooting right into the cab of your vehicle, like, it's pretty loud. So long story short, it was a good run. We got to do something about this though. This exhaust is too loud for me, and that's saying something. I got a plan for these Corsa mufflers though. We'll get into that a little bit later in the video. They're still such a sick muffler, and I got the perfect vehicle for them, just not the Lightning. It's hard when the exhaust is right there. Yes, the plan for this video is a full paint correction, but I honestly don't even like driving the truck that much when it's this loud. So I'm hoping we can knock out a quick, we'll see how quick exhaust project, quiet this thing down a little bit, make it more enjoyable to drive, and then we will transform the paint. For now, let's get back to the garage. Oh, sorry cows, sorry. All right, I've already taken the liberty of getting 4,600 pounds of Ford Lightning up in the air. I don't know what's up with my old Harbor Freight jack. I might have to upgrade to one of those new fancy Daytona ones because this thing would go up a few pumps and then just stop going up. So I had to get the old Schwaben long reach, low profile jack. Did the job even though it's only rated for 2 tons. She was working, but she got the job done. Anyways, here's what we got to hopefully quiet this thing down. These are Borla XR1 mufflers. Not sponsored yet. Borla, hit me up, you know, let me know. But I did a bunch of research, and also, you know, if you guys remember the first exhaust video, you know that it's tight down there. So I needed something small-ish. So these are, you know, pretty darn compact. I think they're gonna do better than your typical resonator would. A lot more packing material in there. The body of the muffler itself is right at 12 inches. And then right off the bat, you can see, you know, there's some sound deadening material in there. Got the perforated interior there, and then obviously that's all packing material. So that is the difference between these and the Corsa. And again, both extremely high quality mufflers, both 304 stainless. But Corsa wasn't kidding around when they said the Pro Series were, you know, an aggressive muffler. And again, on the Lightning, it's just too loud for me. So just a quick recap. Again, the exhaust comes out right there. Figure the long tubes end right about there. You've got that distance to make something work. Let me show you how tight it is. Actually, we need all the room we can get, no creeper. So, got the driver's side header over there, over yonder, passenger side header. The crossover comes over here, comes into, boom, immediately the X pipe that I made. And then that goes right into just barely wide enough to, you know, I had to do a couple pie cuts to get it to come out. Right into those beautiful Corsa Pro Series mufflers. And then back here, basically, again, a couple pie cuts, tight turns. This one actually has to go and curve back. Boom, right out the side. There's no room for any nonsense. If this was a typical truck, we would have all the room in the world to go out behind this rear tire or even out under the bumper. Not with the race truck, not with the Lightning. So that's what we're dealing with, and that's why I had to go with somewhat of a small muffler. I thought about finding some mini mufflers to kind of weld in somewhere, but then I really just thought, why not just get a more quiet muffler? And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So right now, I think I'm going to unbolt basically what I did last fall. V-banded here, V-banded there. At least I did that, so this is nice and easy to take down, hopefully. And let's see how we can maybe finagle these Borla mufflers in there. All right. Woo! Monster. All right, let's get this thing out of here. All right, so 4 V-bands later, got what I just built last fall out. Looks like I had a leak here. Maybe I need to re-weld or clean up some of those welds. Maybe another little pinhole right there. Other than that, this looks good. I mean, it's only got a few hundred miles on it. I don't see why it wouldn't. But here's what I'm talking about with the Corsa mufflers. You got these, you know, pretty large muffler bodies. You take a peek inside, and that little, whatever that thing is all you get. Actually, you can hear my voice echoing in there. Other than that, it is, for all intents and purposes, basically a straight pipe. So my guess is whatever they got going on in here is for drone reduction and not so much volume reduction, which I think I might pop these onto the C6, the twin turbo C6 outside, which just got the boot out of the garage because I also did a custom exhaust on that car, and completely straight piped it from the Garrett turbos back. And it sounds incredible, and I love it. but it drones like crazy at 2,000 RPM.
Right there. There's definitely a lot of drone.
So that's a 3-inch exhaust. These are 3-inch mufflers. I'm thinking these beautiful Corsa Pro Series mufflers are gonna be a perfect fit for that car. If I can find a way to fit them in the stock C6 location. That's a project for another day. Anyways, for this Lightning, I'm hoping that these Borla mufflers will quiet this thing down quite a bit. And in a perfect world, all I'm gonna do here, it would be great if I didn't have to change anything past here and nothing past here. If I can basically lop the ends off this muffler and get these things in exactly the same position as the Corsas, slap these muffler hangers on there, and then put this whole thing back in, not have to touch anything off the header, not have to touch those tailpipes that I put together in the last setup. Hopefully this will be a little bit easier. I was thinking of like welding up a quick jig and doing one muffler at a time, but I honestly think I'm just gonna cut this muffler out here and then start tacking stuff together. Then we'll make sure it fits in the truck, and then we can fully TIG weld it together just like we did with this setup. Easy as that, right? No, it's a fab project. It's probably gonna take forever. Can't take the first step until you get started, start cutting stuff, and hopefully this thing quiets the truck down a little bit, gives it a better tone, and makes it more manageable to daily drive. So I'm gonna quit yapping, get the saws out, get the welders out, get the grinding tools out, and let's get to work. Well, just like with any fab projects, we are making a mess, but I've made some progress here. Got the Alpha TIG out and decided to do what my original plan was, and that is to make a little jig here. So this is actually a scrap piece of the frame rail off the Marauder, if you guys are watching that series. Cut one to support it in this axis and one to support it in this axis. This thing is actually really rock solid, or sock rolled as I like to say, and that has allowed me to basically cut and grind and manipulate this so that hopefully we don't have to do any work beyond here or up there, and I can just slide in the muffler where I want and make it work. So with a little bit of manipulation here, I think I've got decent gaps. Once it's hard to show you guys with one hand, but same thing over here, a lot of grinding, but we are pretty much lined up. So the idea would be to find a way that this is, I know I was tight on the top, but these mufflers are pretty compact. Maybe tilt this a little bit like that, something like that, and then put the other muffler in the same way, but we'll tack this one in first, probably do a test fit in the truck just to make sure it's good, and then I will cut this muffler out, which will now be now the whole thing will be supported over here, do the same thing over there, and then when we're all done, obviously we can, if we want to, we can cut these little brackets I made off. And hopefully that will save me a whole bunch of time. I say a whole bunch of time, but I definitely think that it will, not having to touch anything on the tailpipes or anything forward of this X pipe that I made last fall. But this is still gonna take a while. Cutting, grinding, removing a little bit, test fitting, grinding a little more, test fitting, and then obviously welding it up. But I think it's gonna pay off. So I'm gonna put my head down, turn up some G Unit is what I'm listening to right now on Spotify, and just knock these things out. So let's get her done. All right, the quick exhaust project is done. It took a couple nights because I only had a couple hours to work here and there, but overall, not that bad. My plan worked really well to kind of make that little bracket to support the exhaust and then basically slice out the courses and then graft the borlas in, and turned out great. X-pipe bolted right up to the existing V-bands, and then our pipes down here came out just like they're supposed to. Might have to make an adjustment to this one just a tad. I wish it should be flush with this one, and it looks like it's out just like 1/8 of an inch, but that should be an easy adjustment at the V-bands over there. But nothing is rubbing or hitting, and those dual wall tips are looking sweet. In classic New Hampshire fashion, it went from 58 degrees and raining to literally 90 degrees and 100% humidity and 0 wind today. So it is miserably muggy out there, and I don't really want to open the garage doors because it's nice and cool in here, but we got to fire this thing up and hear it and see how we did. So let's do that. That is so much better. Aw, she's a little cold-blooded, those cams and all that. But that is night and day compared to the Corsas, and still obviously a straight through muffler, so shouldn't have any effect on our power at all. Should be much more reasonable to cruise this thing around. But yeah, let's see what the weather does in the next 12 or so hours, and we'll back this thing out and see how it sounds on the road, and then we will get to the paint correction. Conversation here without me screaming. That's a good start. Good morning. It is a few days later. Summer is finally here in New Hampshire. It was over 90 degrees yesterday and it's supposed to be almost 100 today. If you guys are from New England, you know that the humidity is also going to be way up there. It's about 6:30 in the morning right now. It's already hot, so I figured I'd get out here bright and early. Borlas are on. They sound awesome. Actually ended up re-welding one of those rear pipes, just added a small kind of pie cut. Got the exhaust tips absolutely perfect. They were a little bit too far apart on the last setup, so I fixed that, with this setup, and was able to straighten them out a little bit. Looks so sweet. But yeah, I don't remember. We'll have to go back to the footage and see what the courses were at cold start. But I want to say it was well over 100. Here we got about 94, 95. Maybe some of you sound experts can chime in. I know that decibel readings are not always linear, so it's hard to say, but I mean, it is so much quieter. It is like night and day, and I think we're going to be happy with it. So before it gets too hot, let's take this thing for a drive and see how it sounds in the truck. Woo. Nice out right now, but it is going to be hot later. All right, under throttle, 1700 RPM, cruising in the truck, 84 decibels. More than reasonable. Curious to see how that hot idle sounds too. That was the one thing that I really liked about the Corsas. Well, wide open too, but it was just too loud. But the hot idle just sounded really good. So we'll let this thing get nice and warm and see how they sound. I also bet that once the mufflers are fully broken in and that packing hardens up a little bit, I bet you that they get just a tiny bit louder, but we'll see. Time will tell, but right now I'm very pleased. For $150 per muffler, this thing is totally drivable again. And I'd be willing to bet that once we gas it, they're gonna open right up and it's still gonna sound insane. All right, let's do a similar test to what we did a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna do about a third throttle. Let's see what the decibel reading is in the cab. Oh my God. So almost 30 decibels less. I like it. I like it. Doesn't sound like it's straight piped anymore, which, 20-year-old me might have been a little disappointed, but 35-year-old me now is much happier that I can not have my ears bleed every time I give it more than a quarter throttle in this truck. You know what else I'm curious about is, if you guys recall, on the dyno, we were making almost 20, or exactly at 20 pounds of boost on this truck on pump gas, which was a little bit more than both myself and the tuner were comfortable with. So after the dyno and when we were cleaning up the engine bay, I called up Kenny Bell and said, give me a larger diameter blower pulley to try and bring that boost down to a more reasonable, like 16, 17 pounds of boost. But by the time I installed it, it was like December, the roads were cold, and I could never really tell what we got the boost down to. Well, today it is nice and hot. I think the roads are hopefully warm enough that we can hold traction. Let's see what this thing makes for boost at wide open. All right, if we can see through the boost gauge, which has condensated from coming out of the cold garage, let's keep an eye on that. Let's do like a 35-40 roll. We'll roll into it, I guess, and see if we, what kind of boost we make. All right, so two things. I saw probably 16 pounds of boost right there. I didn't go quite to red line, but it should be fairly flat with a blower like this. So that is perfect for what we were looking for. A nice, safe pump gas level of boost. And secondly, this thing still sounds insane at wide open throttle. It's just, instead of being at 11, it's now at like an 8. Which is exactly what I wanted. It still sounds like a muscle truck or a race truck at wide open, but it is totally drivable. So, mission success. Let's go see what the hot idle sounds like. Not quite as aggressive as the Corsas at hot idle, but I still like it. I still like the fact that I can drive it and floor it without damaging my ears and have a conversation in the truck. Still sounds awesome. You can still hear that chop. And like I said, I bet you these louden up a little bit as we break them in. All right, now we are going to let this thing cool down all day. And then tonight, when it gets a little bit cooler out and as the sun goes down and we can find some shade, we are finally going to start the point of this video, which was a paint correction. I'll go into some of the defects that I'm talking about a little bit later. But basically, I've not washed this thing enough in the over a year that I've owned it, and I've certainly not had a buffer or a clay bar or any sort of ceramic coating on it. So the first step, of course, is going to be a full, foam cannon paint decontamination, and then we are going to do a clay bar, and then, you know, if you guys have been on the channel, you know the deal. We're going to make this thing absolutely perfect, which might require a little bit of sanding, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. This thing is covered in water spots and dirt and pollen. It's summer. It's time to make this thing shine, get it ready for cruising. Well, real fuel in the driveway right about now is probably 110. Can feel the heat radiating off the asphalt, but after work, and as good as time as ever to get this thing washed up. I don't have a water filtration system yet, so I think we're just going to pull it into the shady spot next to the garage here and get this thing washed up. Just kind of wanted to show you guys in direct sunlight what we're after. Just years and years of swirls, probably non-touchless car washes. I don't know if this truck has ever had a buffer on it. You know, it looks good in the right lighting, but you get up close and it's dirty right now, which actually kind of hides some of it, but it's in need of a paint correction, and we'll talk about the rest later. But let's get to work, get this thing washed up. Just gonna wait for the sun to go down at this point. Should be good. 2 buckets as always. First step of any good paint correction is done, and that is a full wash and decontamination of the paint. Of course, we started with a really good rinse to get off any major dirt or dust. Then we hit it with the Geon foam, which is gonna lock onto all those particles, and then you're gonna rinse that away. I actually skipped a step because we're doing a full paint correction, but normally you'd use the Geon foam, then let it grab as much dirt and stuff that could potentially smear into your paint, rinse that away, then load up your bucket with bathe rather, and then wash your vehicle, and then you're good to go. But because we're doing a full paint correction, I just washed with the foam, then we decontaminated all the paint with their iron remover, same thing with the wheels, and then went to town with my clay mitt. And I don't know if this truck has ever been clayed before. The roof, you guys heard that, was pretty bad. Everywhere else was pretty bad, but you know, not nearly as bad as the flat surfaces always get it the worst. Obviously the hood is no longer original to the truck. But yeah, she is basically ready for paint correction, but just wanted to go through what we're after here. Let's start with the original paint on the truck, or what I suspect is the original paint on the truck. You guys already saw in the B-roll footage I showed, it's actually gonna be harder to see in this lighting. But the usual stuff, swirls, scratches, you know, no real orange peel or anything like that. Just, you know, years and years of washes and lack of wax and Florida sun and hazing and holograms and yada, yada, yada. You know, looks good from 20 feet away, but you get up on this thing on a sunny day and it is just swirl city. This bedside is, I believe, original paint as well. Same thing, it's got some water spots on there. Here's an interesting thing I noticed shortly after buying the truck, but I got such a good deal on it, it was really a non-issue. I think that maybe the top half of this cab has been painted before, and I think that this right here is maybe where they use one of those products that's supposed to blend the clears together. I mean, kind of a hack thing to do if it is what I'm expecting. You know, normally you just want to paint the whole thing, but I think there's some sort of blend going on here because there's the exact same thing going on the other side. But we, of course, painted this fender because there was a brake fluid thing going on. We painted the hood because it's aftermarket Cal hood. We painted this headlights around because it was all scratched up. Painted the bumper to fill the plate holes. Painted this bedside, the whole bedside, because right here there was some fading from the Florida sun. It had gone through the clear coat and into the base coat, so we had to basically paint this area and then clear the whole bedside. Painted the spoiler. Other than that, I think most of the paint on this truck is original. Here's that. Where can we see this? Yeah, right there. There's that other spot I was talking about. But, so if we didn't have a bunch of aftermarket paint on this thing, we'd do the normal things we do. A cut, polish, ceramic coat, done. But if you guys remember when Ben and I were painting that day last July or August, it was like 100 degrees, super humid, and this stuff kind of showed up on the last layer of clear. It's like the clear dried as it was falling down. There's like these tiny little particles. You know, Ben's a good guy. He obviously offered to completely repaint the hood, and I was like, dude, I honestly think that's in the top layer. I think it will wet sand out. And you know, we got a little bit of orange peel, not too bad, but a couple little nibs of dirt. But I think that this hood, where I'm going with this, is I think we're gonna need to wet sand this hood and potentially this fender as well. Basically all the parts that we painted, at least on the truck, like the hood, the fender, and that bedside, I think are gonna need wet sand. This fender, if you guys are gonna be able to see it, it's got the same thing going on. See, this is the kind of stuff that if I didn't get right up on it, you guys would never see, but that's what we're all about here, is transparency. A bunch of orange peel, or not a ton, but a little bit of orange peel, but I'd really like to get rid of that. So we'll go from the fender to the door. You can see there's no longer that weird haze sparkle thing going on up top. Over on this panel, mainly just swirls and defects. This panel, brand new paint, but still some work to be done. So here is my arsenal of stuff that we're gonna use to hopefully get this paint 100%. I've got a assortment of sandpaper here that we're gonna use on my DA, probably with this foam interference pad. We don't need to go crazy. I'm honestly gonna start on the hood, probably do a test spot right here, right in the center. I might even start with 2,000 or 3,000. You always want to try and do the least amount, or remove the least amount of clear coat possible. Doesn't matter if you're talking about sanding or polishing or buffing. Start higher and move down if you have not removed the defects. So we'll do that on all the flat surfaces and some of the curved surfaces. Some really tight areas, I've got the wet sandpaper that I've used for years to get out runs and orange peel and all that. Then we'll move in to all of the Geon products. We've got heavy cut pad, regular cut pad, a polish pad, and a finish pad, and of course their extra cut compound. This is the Q2M Compound Plus, so this is going to be the heaviest cut. Then of course your regular compound for just more of a regular cut, and then your polish is going to remove any hazing left behind by your cutting stage. Then of course, again, the usual suspects, the old Flex, DOS Original, DA, and my Rupes mini guy here for any of the hard to reach areas. Let's stop talking, let's get to work. I've never sanded, like wet sanded clear coat with a DA before. You're supposed to do it damp. Obviously, you guys have seen me do it by hand before, but I'm stepping into uncharted territory here. You guys are gonna do it right with me. Let's put some sandpaper on a DA and slap it on brand new paint. What could possibly go wrong? Looks way better. No, it actually looks pretty bad. We're struggling a little bit on the hood here. I have done so many different test areas, as you can see, and I can't seem to get the recipe right, per se. Started out here with, I think, 2,000 grit, or maybe, I think I did 2,000, polished it out, realized there was still some texture, went down to 1,500, then 2,000, then 3,000, polished it out with the Geon foam pad, and you could still see some of the sanding marks. So then I went with a little more 3,000, and then brought out my heavy-duty wool cutting pad. This is about as hard of a cut as you're going to get from a DA. And it looks pretty good, you know, from right here. But at the right angles, you can still see some sanding marks. I apologize, it's hard to see on camera, but there's still like sanding marks in here. And I've tried just about every other combination. I've done just 2,000 grit and then 3,000 grit, and you can still, no matter what, I just can't seem to get the sanding marks out. And I've never had this problem before when I do it by hand with just a block. So over here you can see I've pretty much got, if you look at the fluorescent or the LED light there, I've got all of the texture out as opposed to like up here. You can see these little dimples. That's all orange peel. That's basically what we're trying to get rid of. I'm trying to think of where there's a bad area of it that I haven't touched too much yet. Yeah, I pretty much sanded the whole hood at this point, but you guys remember before what this looked like. So, and even from here to there, we've got a little bit more dimples. But anyways, I've got to figure out some sort of recipe that works up here. I don't know if it's my Harbor Freight, you know, sanding discs or whatever. The 1500 doesn't even feel like it has any cut at all, but clearly it does because something is leaving sanding scratches. These foam pads are, I don't know, they literally just feel like the back of a sponge. We got an F16. Where'd he go? There he goes. Shoo! It's hard to film sometimes with the plane traffic, but I will never complain about seeing an F-16 give it the dinner taking off. Anyways, I think I might honestly go back to just, I've already taken out most of the texture. I might go back to what I know, which is just hand wet sanding. Maybe I'll play with this a little bit more off camera. We'll see if I can get it to work, but who knows. To keep my spirits up, I went back to what I know is gonna work and what I'm very pleased with, which is the Geon foam cutting pad and their Compound Plus cutting compound. And just did this fender over here, a little test spot. You guys know I'm all about my 50-50. And we've removed all of the defects here. And then you can see, you know, what we just got rid of. That's just one pass with the with that setup. All those swirls and scratches gone. Easy to do with a DA. It doesn't have to be the Flex one. Just those two things, the compound and the pad, and DA of your choice. And you can go from whatever garbage that was to boom. We haven't even polished this yet. You guys know how I like to do it. We'll get the whole truck defect free, and then we'll get rid of the haziness left behind by the buffer or the DA, or the cutting phase, I should say. But I've got some work ahead of me. This wet sanding stuff is fighting me a little bit, but I'm going to find a recipe that works here. So, back to work. Tucker, come here. Sit. Good boy. Oh my goodness. What a disaster this is. It is now late on Saturday, and I've spent almost the entire day on this truck, and it still looks absolutely terrible, which is why I'm giving up. For now, anyways. I do not know what the problem is, you guys, but I just have been going in circles with million different products. I got some new sandpaper from Amazon today, 1,000 through 5,000. I have spent hours and hours and hours on this fender. Thought I had it looking pretty good. Then went to do what I thought was a technique that worked over here, and you can see it looks like I washed this thing with a freaking Brillo pad. Oh my God, it just looks so bad still. Like, there's a core problem here that I removed the orange peel, or whatever whatever the defects are, and then the next steps don't remove the steps that the first step created. For example, you do 1500, and then the 2000 grit and 2500 and 3000 grit don't remove the defects from the step before. So then it looks okay. You get the buffer out with a heavy cut compound, polish it all up or compound it all up, and then you've just revealed that there's still a ton of deep scratches. Right here's a perfect example. This was like I hit this with 3000 on the DA for a while. It seemed like a nice uniform surface. Take the buffer off. I'm gonna try and get the camera to focus. See all those sanding marks? I mean, the buffer's not gonna take those out. Like, those are deep. Those need to be wet sanded, but I just did wet sand. So that's the circle I've been going in last night and the night before and most of the day today. A lot of time on this tiny little fender, which from 5 feet away looks like glass. So, I mean, I guess to the positive, there's absolutely zero orange peel now. It's like, a very flat finish. But if we were to back this thing out into the sunlight, it would look like it went through the world's oldest touch car wash with those little flappy, cloth things. It's pretty bad. So before I take my boot and put a boot-sized dent in the fender, because I'm about at that frustration level right now, and you guys can probably understand if you work on something all day and hours the day before, and it just continues to look terrible, I think I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to quit for the night. I think I'm going to do some research online. I think I'm going to order some high-quality pads. If you guys have any recommendations, I mean, it could be something I'm doing on my side, but I've tried everything from, hand sanding what I know works, 1500 up through 3000, and I still can't remove those scratches that I think were left from these Hercules Harbor Freight, pads. If you guys have had good luck with these in the past, let me know tips or tricks, or if you are having the same experience I've had, let me know. But I think I'm just going to order some 3M stuff. And if that doesn't work, then it's definitely something that I'm doing. But I've got into trouble here on the hood. Figured I'd start fresh with a fresh panel on the fender. Got into trouble over there, so I'm really hesitant to open up a can of worms on the bedside here that, has lots of weird curves and is I really want to have my technique down, but at the same time, like, the orange peel on this bed is pretty bad. So I really would, don't mind whatever this water spots or whatever is, but like, the orange peel is bad. I just want this thing looking good. The good news is the rest of the truck is absolutely glass. We were able to get the whole thing cut pretty much defect free all the way up, down, other than the parts that we repainted last summer. Huge shout out to Geon. Their compound so far has been fantastic. It goes on easy, it comes off easy, which is huge. I've used so many compounds in the past that don't come off easy, and we removed all the defects, so I don't know what else you could want from a compound. Link for all their stuff, of course, will be in the description. But that is going to do it for this one, guys. I promise I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get on the Marauder for a couple days. I know you guys are wanting to see that content. I need to get my head straight, hopefully make some progress on this, order some good stuff for this, and then, just take a breather. But if you guys have any tips at all, I'm all ears to getting this paint 100%. We're pretty close. If I can get rid of these sanding scratches, you guys know that I can then polish it up. We'll ceramic coat it. This thing will be ready for summer cruising. Got the exhaust done, so that's a positive. We did get a decent amount done here, but there's still a lot of work left to do. That's going to be in the next one. I'll catch you guys then.